Once upon a time, I had a dream, a sixth grade dream, of making my own dress. I spent hours agonizing over my fabric, gingham or plaid, polka dots or stripes. After spending over an hour hunched over the sewing machine, I had my masterpiece. A misshapen, vaguely rectangular bit of cloth that looked more like a chewed up pillowcase than an actual dress. Nevertheless, it was mine, and I was so proud of it. Thus began my interest in fashion design. I'm going to talk about the fast fashion industry and its harmful effects on the environment. I would like to bring awareness to new people and hopefully share some new information about the topic. I personally know quite a fair bit on the fashion industry. Over the years, I've taken a few stagecraft and design classes which focus on fashion history, and as I've mentioned, I like to make clothes myself. In preparation for this speech, I also found several peer-reviewed articles on the topic. I'll be talking about fast fashion itself, as well as its impacts on the environment and possible alternatives. So what is fast fashion? The term was coined to describe how quickly clothing brands could bring designs to their locations. But today, the term fast fashion is usually used to describe how quickly fashion trends change. For example, in the 2023 Indiana Journal of Global Legal Studies titled The Cost of Looking Good, How Fashion and Trend-Based Consumerism Impact the Economy, Law, and Environment, we read that fast fashion brands like Zara have a product turnaround of around 2 weeks. Now that clothes can be made and shipped so quickly, the fashion cycle is significantly shorter. Because of this, clothes are no longer being made to last. Everyone's had the experience of their jeans wearing out at the knees. But did you know that jeans were originally made as a more durable alternative for clothing for laborers? If your pants wore out, it would be time-consuming and expensive to replace them. And in the early 20th century, people didn't have very many outfits. In his article, Why Vintage Clothing Was Made Better, The Economics of Durability, David Shuck explains that in the year 1900, the average household spent roughly 14% of their income on apparel, as compared to 4% in 2003. The real reason our clothes wear out so quickly is because durability is no longer the main selling point. If a company can make their clothes faster and cheaper, then more people will buy them, and then they'll make more money. We don't pay for durability, so we don't get durability. And this isn't just the case for jeans. Ever had the experience of buying a new silky soft shirt just to throw it in the wash and it turns into sandpaper? This is because most clothes are soaked in a chemical softener, making them feel better in store. But once you wash them, the true unpleasant texture is revealed. The short life cycle isn't the only reason people are buying clothes more frequently. Nowadays, trends rarely last more than a month or two before moving on. The novelty is what garners the attention, not the quality. For example, this is a Labubu. The Labubu, unlike most trendy items, stayed popular for almost a year. And it reached peak sales in the summer of 2025. And yet, only a year later, you never see them anymore. The trend died. Labubus are a perfect example of fast fashion trends. The popularity spikes quickly and falls just as fast. So what happens when trendy pieces are no longer trendy? Well, they get thrown away. In fact, according to the Environmental Protection Agency, the average American throws away around 70 to 80 pounds of clothes every single year. People regularly clean out their closets, sorting out the items they don't wear often or no longer fit. Unlike our grandparents and great-grandparents, who couldn't afford to waste something potentially useful, most people don't bother to repurpose their old clothes. Fast fashion feeds this cycle. Buy new clothes for cheap, get tired of them, buy more, and then the cycle repeats. It's great for business, but bad for the planet. Additionally, according to a Washington Post article by Allison Chu about new recycling techniques, about 85% of all the textiles produced wind up in the garbage or incinerated. Going to the effort of properly recycling clothes is expensive, and fast fashion brands would much rather dump their discards than repurpose them. For example, this is the Atacama Desert. Located in Chile, the Atacama Desert is the single largest landfill for clothing. This massive fast fashion dump spans over 1.2 square miles, which is about 580 football fields. According to a BBC article titled, Why Your Recycled Clothes Could End Up in the Atacama Desert, we learned that every year, more than 39,000 tons of clothes are illegally dumped here. With these ever-changing trends, it's often cheaper for companies to illegally dump their discarded clothing rather than recycling them properly and economically. Not only that, but some clothes can take over 200 years to decompose in the landfill. To help put that in perspective, plastic bags generally only take around 20 years to decompose. Not only that, but when the clothing does decompose, it releases harmful greenhouse gases into the environment. For example, clothes made of more synthetic materials like polyester release microplastics into the air. However, clothes made of natural materials like cotton do decompose in under a year. So what are some alternatives to these huge landfills? Well, thrift stores are a great option. Fashion can be an expensive hobby. In fact, the average American spends $1,000 on clothing every year, according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. Buying clothes secondhand is generally cheaper than buying them new. Of course, some fast fashion brands will use poor worker conditions, not paying people enough in order to drive their prices down. However, for the most part, it is generally cheaper to buy secondhand. For example, I bought this dress from a thrift store near my house for $7. As you can see, the brand is Effie's Heart, and dresses from this line generally run around $50 to $100 each. Another thing to note is that expensive does not necessarily mean ethical. Fair washing is a term used when a company tricks its customers into thinking it's using more ethical practices while still using those unethical practices. So when you see a luxury price tag, you might assume that means the workers are being paid fairly, when that might not be the case. Conversely, many thrift stores like Goodwill or Salvation Army are in fact non-profit organizations. This means that revenue from sales is poured back into the community. In the 2026 article, Social Purpose Formation and Evolution in Nonprofit Organizations, we read, nonprofit organizations are commonly founded with an explicit intent to pursue a social purpose by addressing specific social issues or problems. The fact is, we really don't need more clothes. There's enough clothes already on the planet to clothe the entire human population many times over. The only thing keeping fast fashion in business is trendiness and affordability. Thrift stores cut down on waste and give clothes a second chance. They may only put a dent in this problem of throwaway clothing, but a dent is better than nothing. Fast fashion offers cheap, trendy clothing, but has huge effects on landfills and environmental health, which is why more sustainable shopping habits matter. Leggings or streetwear, distressed clothing or clean girl, handmade or machine knit, we can all agree that fashion is fun. Fast fashion is not. As English fashion designer Vivienne Westwood said, buy less, choose well, make it last. Thank you.